All right, let's do it. IshMilly, welcome to the inaugural Unstoppable Domains live stream. How does it feel?
Pair of scissors to cut the tape, man. Let's do it.
You could cut through the tension in the air with a knife. I swear. It's so good. Well, we've been,
Little technical stuff in the background, but it's
that's
all
right. We just wanted to get the audience some time to get going here. We got the chats filling up. What's up, chat? Glad to have you here. But yeah, let me give some background on what we're doing here and a bit about, how we're working together. So IshMilly has been, a friend and an advisor and helping Unstoppable figure out, our way in the Web2 domaining world for the past little while. And he's been really helpful for us. And we just think he has a lot of wisdom to share and a great reputation in the community. And he speaks to the people really well. And so we wanted to team up with you and offer this series of live streams and podcasts to be able to educate people about, the basics of domaining up to the, intermediate and advanced stuff, and also to be able to show off some of the stuff that Unstoppable is building, and to package that up and to help get the word out. We think there's a ton of opportunity in domaining, and that it's this little known secret sort of tucked away in the annals of the internet that no one really knows about. But yeah, we want to package up some educational content and be able to display it to the world. So, and as we said on our call last week, we want to make domaining sexy again. So
well.
that's the mission. Let's do it. So yeah, just some table stakes to start off with. Right now, Unstoppable is doing our $5 Fridays.com deal. So you can register up to $100.coms, 100.coms at $5 a piece. That's every Friday for the foreseeable future until you guys abuse us out of my marketing budget. So don't do that, but come in and enjoy the getting while the getting's good. And we're also doing XYZ Wednesdays as well. So yeah, just a ton of deals going on. We're trying to grow fast, and we want, our users to benefit instead of, blowing it on a marketing budget or something like that and spending ads. So come on down, try us out. We're a burgeoning registrar. We're adding new features all the time. And yeah, without further ado, let's jump into it. So Ish, tell us why, education and domaining is so important.
Great question. I think domaining is one of those unique asset classes where people try to figure things out on their own and learn very rapidly that there's some fundamentals to domain investing, right? You obviously need to know what a registrar is, what a registry is, how to find names, how to select, how to price them. Just there's a little bit of fundamental knowledge, and then there's also strategy. Everyone has a different approach, right? You have some domainers that will buy nothing but ultra premium names and try to sell them for a 2x and make $1 million, right? Or, you have someone hand register names for $5 on Unstoppable Domains and they're happy to make $100, which is all good. So it's a combination of fundamentals, strategy. You got to study trends, and now it's a wider field with so many CLDs and CCTLDs. And I feel like being that most domainers aren't profitable, the sell-through rate is typically about 1% for domain investors. The difference is those that are educated and those that aren't. And you can learn the hard way, or you could shorten that learning curve by listening to people who've done it before you. I've benefited a lot from that. And I think that getting educated in anything you do has an ROI, right?
Yeah.
So,
What
but in
was
this
the most,
case, it's very important.
yeah. What was the most formative educational content or person figure in the community that helped you?
Honestly, I came in the domaining business at a very unique time. It was during the pandemic, and I easily put myself in a position where I was asking questions, moderating sessions on Clubhouse and things like that. So I got a collective educational experience from the industry. I thought that was it was a privilege now that I look back at it. You know what I mean? I was able to connect with people that are household names in domain investing, like Rick Schwartz and Muncie Khan, Michael Seiger, Drew Rosner. Like, I met these guys on Clubhouse, and, they easily shared what they knew. Sometimes I disagreed or whatever, but at the end of the day, it was just a blessing to have access to those legends in the business to learn from and ask questions and challenge their views sometimes, you know what I mean? And I think it all shaped up into my education in domaining. And so we're in an era where people talk about domaining on social media now. I don't think that always existed, right? So every week I host a spaces where I learn from people like Michael Darash and other guys. I listen to Domain Sherpa. I just try to study what people who've had success in domaining have done and apply it based on my resources.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Tell me about the course that you put together and what was the impetus for that, and what were some of the major takeaways that you saw in like the education landscape?
Yeah, good question. So in 2021, December 2020, we launched Digital Real Estate Academy. Over the last 4 years, it's onboarded about 1,000 people into the domaining industry. Most of those people aren't active domainers; they're just people that were looking for like a passive income stream, and they wanted to sort of like get some sort of like ground floor overview of domaining. And that course was narrated by Ryan Colby, a good friend of mine, who sold over $70 million worth of domains as back as 2019-20. And so it kind of like was an interesting way to sort of like share what I knew. I've always been a fan of monetizing your expertise. So we built that. We have a Telegram community. It's not as active as it used to be because my priorities changed in the last year or so. I wanted to focus more on building an actual in-person conference. I wanted to focus on selling more of my names, but now I'm getting ready to reevaluate relaunching that, hopefully with Unstoppable Domains, where we can give people some sort of like educational outlet to learn domaining on demand, right? I think very few people talk about domaining in general, and almost everyone knows what a domain is. Most people just don't know that it's an asset that you can flip, right? Until they get that one email saying, hey, someone wants to buy your name. It's usually accidental. And so I feel like that showed me that people are very interested in this asset class, just the same way they are interested in learning how to make money from an e-commerce store or other online money-making opportunities.
Yeah. I mean, you've got like a lot of ground to cover with education, because like it's not like stocks or crypto where like people already get it's like culturally, diffused to where people already understand that you trade stocks to make money, right? And then you tell someone you flip domains, they're like, "What? I didn't even know that was possible."
Right.
And then there's the one of one aspect where you're like, "Wait, how do I even value these things? There's no cash flows. They're not businesses. They could be businesses, but they're also not. They're like real estate." So like there's just a huge steep learning curve that you've got to tackle there.
For
Making
sure.
it steeper is the trick there. But yeah, I feel like there's like latent potential for so many types of people in society to be domainers. Like especially like every researcher, every engineer, every like philosopher, some people that are on like the cutting edge of society, that are like dealing with new terms that are going to be important, or like setting culture, like whether it's like rap or it's like country music or like whatever. Like there's like the canonical language of those people is like always evolving, and then it's like getting into the mainstream as well. And people who are like on the cutting edge really have an opportunity to like monetize their pulse on where culture is moving and what words are going to be meaningful in the future, whether that's like for tech reasons or for culture reasons or for geopolitical reasons or whatever. I find that very exciting. I feel like domains are like the original prediction market. And we've seen Polymarket become really popular recently, especially because of the election. But like domains were the original way to get upside on anything. If you thought that a pair was going to be running, there's like that article about the guy who was like Biden Harris 2020. Yeah. Like he registered that back in like 2009. Like you can predict anything and encode it into, a moniker in a domain, and then 10 years later you can flip it for something insane. So let's segue that into like, what kind of domainers do you think are like underserved at the moment? Like where are there future domainers that we aren't reaching right now?
Yeah, I mean, I'll touch on what you said. That's the first time I ever heard someone say domainers are like the original prediction models.
They
It's a
are.
good, it's great perspective.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't even have to wait for 10 years. 'Cause I've literally bought names that I sold an hour later. I've bought names that I sold a day later, a year
You can't
later.
all be you, IshMilly. Come on, let's
No. The
not
point
give
is,
our audience unrealistic expectations.
no, and that's far from it. That's very rare. But, I've also seen people sell names. I haven't been doing it for a decade. I've seen people sell names that they've had for over a decade. So it just, you never know when the name will find the home, its true home, right? I feel like every time you buy a domain name, you're just holding custody of it, right? So we're custodians of these assets until we can find the right home for them where people can turn them into enterprises and brands and all these amazing things that they potentially could be. But in terms of where we need to discover more domains, I think Gen Z is a great demographic. I think they grew up on the internet. They know what a domain is. They're not, I was talking to someone recently. It's a business that didn't have a website. And they were like, well, yeah, it's just we never needed one.
Yeah.
And, but they're on Yelp, they're on Google reviews, and they didn't even know that. That's not going to happen with someone in Gen Z. They were born with a phone in their hand. And, but they also haven't discovered the opportunity with domain investing. I think domain investing I don't think this was intentional by any means, but I think it's became sort of like a hush hush industry where it's like a handful of people knew about it. And I think in the future, more people will be aware of it. We're in an era right now where you can start a business today. There's social media, there's paid advertising. Things have evolved from where they were, say, in the 2000s or the 90s. And I think once people start realizing that there's value in just the name itself, there will be a lot of them will take action. They just haven't connected the dots.
Yeah. I hear you on like domaining feels like this walled garden where the top 1% domainers are like keeping all the hidden knowledge away from the underlings. It feels like because you look at a lot of the infrastructure and you're like, okay, wait, why did all these marketplaces look like they were made in the 90s and haven't been redesigned since? Why does like
Are you talking about Sado? I'm just kidding.
I didn't say that, IshMilly, don't out me like that, dude.
Yeah.
You go to like expireddomains.net and you see like this very simple interface and like there's no
It's built like
great
Craigslist.
search and there's no like unified search to go through like expired domains and auctions and everything in one place. No one slapped AI on it. It's been like, 3 years now. Come on. So it feels like, yeah, there's a lot of, and there's not to mention like all registration activity is public on Whois. So like there almost certainly are, I'm sure, like huge domains and some of these other guys, like the really sophisticated players, Titan Research and the others, like those guys are probably like scanning Whois constantly, getting intel on like what's being registered, what's not, and like sifting through all that data in a like highly quantitative way. But like none of those tools are available to the layman. Like they're all, being cornered by the old guard, which, props to them. But I feel like there's opportunity to completely disrupt that and turn it on its head if you can offer a consumer domainer product that gives those tools to anyone with an internet connection and like, who's willing to pay the subscription fee or whatever. Any thoughts?
I agree. I think there's
And
definitely
what is the next gen unified research tool for domaining look like?
no, I think there's definitely room for a lot of innovation. I like that you talked about expired domains because every domainer uses that website and it's an API play, right? At the end of the day, it's an API. It leverages multiple APIs and they monetize by affiliate marketing. And I think the UX UI could definitely be improved, right? And I've seen other people, not as pronounced, making an attempt at that. Shout out to Your Next Domain. It's more of a curated play on expired domain names. I'm very bullish on people building around this space, but the challenge there is it's such a small space. Like it's an echo chamber that's sort of like stuck in its ways. You mentioned an old guard. There is an old guard that does exist. And they see the world very differently from where the world is going. And, there's a lot of resistance there as well. And honestly, it's just bias and when you apply basic human psychology, people are afraid of change when they're not positioned for it, right? So today, for example, I saw a domain name DeFi sold for $29,000, right? Or was it $27,000? And, that defies the fundamentals of domain investing. right? It doesn't make any sense. That's a name that an older domainer would snub, right? But we're seeing enterprises looking at these type of names and saying, "Oh, we're definitely going to build something on DeFi.fun." I mean, look at Pump. They're making millions and millions of dollars daily with a .fun name, right? And this is not a me praising .fun, but it's just one example of how these new CLDs will emerge as part of culture for certain niches in tech, whether it's in blockchain or AI or some other type of technology that will emerge in the coming years. Like you said earlier, the domain becomes a prediction tool. It becomes a bet in the future, and that's exciting. I think those tools that will enable future domainers are being built right now, and I think you guys are sort of like leading that new genre of builders. Like I like what Unstoppable Domains is doing. I'm a big fan. I think you guys are coming into the Web2 space with a different perspective, right? And obviously you've been strategic in your onboarding strategy. Matt, like you said, when we met at ICA, wants to do it very slow and solid, right? And I like that approach. He's not in a rush, but the opportunity is huge. You know, there's so many potential domainers that could be onboarded via education. And when they actually discover domaining, they'll easily select the better tool. They're not going to be comfortable with a tool like expireddomains.net. It's just clunky and old.
Yeah.
When they see something that's more modern, they'll gravitate to that. So I shout out to all the builders out there building innovative tools. I want to shout out .db. That's another cool one that I use. There's so many of them. And, I like what, Atom.com is doing. I like what Dynadot is doing in the space. There are a lot of people building pretty cool stuff in the space.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that sets Unstoppable apart is our business model. So, our game is getting domains on chain and finding opportunities for monetization when we can offer loans for domains. We can fractionalize them, you can securitize them. And there's just a whole world of financialization that opens up once you bring them on chain, and you can plug and play these digital assets with the world of DeFi and all the, existing protocols that are already out there. So that allows us to loss lead on the traditional registrar side of things. So we give at cost registrations and renewals and transfers really below cost right now because we're doing these promos. It allows us to not have to nickel and dime our customers and just focus on giving them a great experience, getting the domains on chain. And we can focus on growing the pie and tackling an entirely new market, inventing a new market of services around domain financialization that doesn't exist yet. So all of that allows us to, play the long game, and that just ends up with a better underlying experience and costs for the domainers. So yeah, I'm very excited, and we watch Atom and these other guys very closely. I think they've done a great job, and Atom won the Innovators Award at ICA, where I saw you last month. So they're being recognized, and people are seeing all the good work that they're doing. But let's jump into some domainer questions. So, I am fairly new to this industry. I joined Unstoppable maybe a year ago as an advisor, and then joined full time only a couple of months ago. And in that time, I've been getting into domaining myself. The best way to understand, how we can build a better service for our customers is to become one of my customers myself.
Right.
So, I've registered
Connective, isn't
maybe,
it?
huh?
It's a
It's pretty fun. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Coming from crypto, I already had the gambling ethos. So I was just a sitting duck when domaining fell into my lap. And then so I haven't gone too crazy. I've probably registered 25, 30 domains in the past couple of months. So a good little clip. I find myself being on the cutting edge of tech, and by that I mean just being on Twitter all day, every day, and trying to find keywords that I think are going to be important, and find overlooked things there. So I guess for domainers starting out, what are the most common mistakes that you see? I find myself I'll leave it open ended.
question. I mean, the first thing is you're going to suck at it. So
I knew that was coming.
That's just the truth. You're gonna suck at it. But you can minimize the damage. I think you're applying a lot of discipline. The fact that you've only registered 25 names reflects that. Most people will come in and just go crazy and feel like they're like the smartest person ever. Oh, I just bought this name for I just bought this XYZ for $1 and I'm going to sell it for $20,000. And you see people selling names and you start drawing this conclusion. So there's a learning curve, for lack of better words, to put it nicely. And I think it's important that you understand who the end user of any name you're buying is, right? Having names just sitting in your account don't help. You have to list them for sale on all the marketplaces, in as many marketplaces as possible. That's essentially distribution. Because if you have inventory and no one knows it's for sale or how much you're selling it for, chances are you won't sell it, right?
Mm.
And I'm a big advocate of marketing your names, whether, doing some sort of outbound marketing so that you increase the visibility of your names. Because I believe that when you increase the visibility, you increase the odds of the sale. You have to price them properly. And I think now we're going into a new realm, which I will call the golden age of domaining, where with those 25 names, you can sell one of those names to yourself and build it out and start earning money from paid ads or from programmatic advertising, Google AdSense, affiliate marketing. You can now be the end user, which wasn't always the case with domaining, right?
Hey,
Where it was always 100% I have to flip this name. But now you can actually look at your portfolio and say, wow, I can build something with this with an AI tool and I can start earning revenue and maybe even sell it as something that generates passive income. In the past, that was done with domain parking, and the revenue from domain parking has been declining rapidly. And so I think there's a new opportunity to replace that with building out your domain into a fully functional website
yeah. I've
that
always
you
been somewhat skeptical of domain development as a strategy. Like it always seemed like putting the cart before the horse
interested
because like domainers are investors at heart. And that's a totally
and you
different
don't want to
skill
do it
set
passively.
than
Yeah,
being an
yeah.
entrepreneur for the most, like usually, not always. So then often they overlap. But it seems like the guy who just happens to own beer.com because he was hyper online in the 90s, like isn't necessarily going to have the skill set or connections to make that a great business versus, Anheuser-Busch or whoever owns it now. And, they probably don't even do anything.
Well, it's all case by case,
Yeah.
beer.com is very unique compared to like someone was trying to build a directory of different type of pubs or whatever, or
Sure.
microbreweries, you know what I mean? So every name has some sort of like potential use case, right? Otherwise, the name's worthless. Why would anybody buy your name if they can't do something with it, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's misspelling or whatever other strategic reason. But every name has a purpose. And I think that sometimes putting that purpose into executing that purpose or the utility or the value of that name, there was a challenge, which was I need to learn how to code. I need to learn how to build. I need to understand some marketing. But now we have, you know, all these resources that make that easier than ever. I'm not saying it's like completely plug and play, but it becomes an option for newer domainers now to say, you know what, maybe I should look into my 25 names while I'm waiting for a sale. Maybe I can develop one of them into a directory. Maybe I can start a newsletter, right? There's so much you can do with a domain name other than just waiting for it to be flipped for a multiple.
Yeah.
And I think that that's all part of domain investing because the name determines what the potential is. So when you're selecting these names or hand registering these names, you should think more than just flipping them. You should think about how can I use this name to monetize my expertise? Who's going to buy this name? Who does this name benefit in my network? How can this name help me get more visibility with my personal brand? Or protecting my personal brand or protecting my main business or becoming more enhanced in my main business. So I just feel like the newer domainers will be more inclined and more receptive to that than someone who's just sitting there waiting for a name to sell.
Yeah, well, and just the cost to entry is way lower. Like LLMs spin you up a shit ton of SEO content in like, a couple of hours. And you could like do automated reach out to e-commerce sites to get affiliate links. And, you could assemble an affiliate site pretty rapidly with AI in a way that was, a
Exactly.
full-time job before. And so all that's very exciting. Okay.
I
Well,
feel like you'll be able to do outbounding with agentic AIs. You could do it now. I'm still experimenting with that, but at the
yeah.
very least, you could do research with it.
Are you using specific tools that are outbound agents, or what are you experimenting with?
It's, I actually hand registered outboundingAIagent.com. Uh,
Uh,
I sold customersupportai.com. I just see a future where a lot of the things that we hate doing will be done by AI. So what do I hate doing? I hate picking up the phone and talking to someone. People do that all the time. I get AI calls all day.
sorry to drag you here, by the way.
No. People do AI calls all day. I mean, I get them, and I don't like where they are right now, but I would assume they'll evolve with time, right? I'm sure there are ways to use AI to leverage email, outbounding, follow up, research, and all kind of other stuff that we typically will procrastinate. Yeah, I think that in the coming months, those things will become sort of like easily outsourced to AI. And I'm excited about that. And I think that applies to domaining as well. There are people out there that know how to use expired domains name, for example, better than the average person. They can scrap information from it or scrap data from it. I think coding has always been an edge. And now with AI, you don't necessarily need to know how to code. So I'm excited to see what AI does to domain investing. I think that's, if you have a domain and you want to monetize it, you put up a blog or some type of content. You don't have to worry about writing the content anymore. You can use AI for that. You slap up a website, you start getting traffic because you picked the right name with the right keywords, and next thing you know, you have a Google AdSense account and the name is making 100,000 a year. A good example, there's a domain that I just learned about called Pokemon-Zone. So an average domainer, that name's a no-no. It's got Pokemon, which is intellectual property. It's got a dash, which is a negative thing in domain investing. But they're making $104,000 a month with that domain name in less than a year. So going in the direction of building is really, really important. I think it should be part of the education. Because when people understand that they can build, they're gonna want to buy even better names, right? So have an edge. And then they'll be like, oh, I'll build some, I'll keep some. So I think domainers learning how to build is an unfulfilled thing right now that there's an opportunity in.
Yeah. Yeah, I see like outbounding as a really ripe area for automation. There's just, I mean, Perplexity is able to scan like hundreds of websites if you can chain prompts together.
Correct.
You can tell it, hey, look on Google Maps or Yelp or all these, ChatGPT operator could also, navigate the web at your direction. And a lot of just the manual grunt work that people are doing is very easily automatable. Now, we are like on the precipice of just a flood of content and DMs and just nonsense that these AIs are going to be putting out. So I feel like, there's this very narrow window of time where you can be an early adopter of these AI tools before like the rest of the web catches on to this like flood of content, like spam, automated DMs on every platform you can imagine, automated content. Like eventually these platforms are going to crack down on that. They're going to have tighter spam limits. They're going to be able to detect,
AI content.
generative content and filter it out because for the most part, it's not that useful, at least for now, until we're all obsoleted in a few years. But until then, you should, be on board early. We're looking into some of these tools. I think like, at the end of the day, when you're closing a sale, and you could probably speak to this very well, like it pays to just have a human voice and to get on the phone with someone and to be able to speak to their needs and handle their objections and whatever. But in a lot of the grunt work leading up to that moment, can be, outsourced. Yeah. So that's very exciting. Well, okay. I wanna take a little detour here and so you can roast my portfolio.
Let's do it.
Live on air.
What do you got?
Can you see?
Yeah, I'm looking at it.
All right. So, yeah. Oh, so basically, I mean, there's a couple things going on here.
But you found the outbounding trend, I see.
I'm telling you, I saw that tweet and I was like, damn it, from you. And I was like, this guy,
What tweet are you
I've
talking
been
about?
talking to you about automated outbounding. When you said you bought AIoutbounder.com or something.
It was, yeah, outbounding AI agent. I can't remember. I have a
Yeah.
few.
And I was like, damn, like I have been sitting on this like, thesis that we've been working on internally and I haven't been trying to bet on it. So, that just showed me like there's opportunities everywhere, like in my daily life, where you feel like you're on the cutting edge in some way, shape, or form, and you can bet on that. So I had auto outbounding. That was sort of the genesis. And then, I was like, auto is a nice term, like prefix that I don't think people are using when they talk about AI stuff.
I agree. I think it's very intelligent to do that because we're going to go to a point where most companies won't have the word AI to describe themselves. It's going to be so redundant.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, like businesses will all use AI. How many businesses go with the word online?
Yeah, exactly.
You know
It's
what I
just
mean? In their
it's a,
description.
it's assumed, right? Yeah, it just blends in the background. And I'm sure auto will as well. But yeah, that's a great point. I remember some domain Sherpa, I think it was Rosner maybe saying like there's different regimes, like life stages of a business where it makes sense to have different domains. Like early on when it's a burgeoning keyword, I think like the smart kitchen was the term that they used. Like it actually pays to have the very sort of explicit but not very sexy two-word keyword exact match domain. So it was like smartkitchen.com. Like, because that's, if people are like, oh, turn on the smart kitchens or whatever, they're going to search smart kitchen. So it pays to have that. And then as the company matures, as the smart kitchen as a term, becomes more just like kitchen with like, what's another, automatic cars, for example, like when automatic cars were a big deal, automaticcars.com would have been nice, back in the 60s or whenever that happened. But then then it just blends into cars. And then, a brandable or some other kind of domain actually makes a lot more sense in that case. So it's fascinating to think about like, as the adoption for a term like across the society happens, different domains become more or less useful as the canonical terms shift around a bit. But anyway, so then I took auto and I applied it to a bunch of other like office functions. So forecasting, budgeting, and then let's see what else I got hot. So this is all while I was testing ChatGPT's operator, which is like computer use GPT. And then it's like, oh, operator is a fun term. I feel like we've been using agent. Operator just launched. Like if, OpenAI could totally set the canonical term that we use there with their market positioning. So why not operator? So hive operators, I feel like is just omni operators, just something generic that you could imagine. I think I have swarm.
I like Solana Maximalist. I own SolanaMaxis.com and SoulMaxis.com. I think your portfolio is decent. I just think that these are names that are you out to. I mean, I don't see where you can outbound these names to, right? So that's one thing I'll say is an area of improvement. Now, a lot of people buy names without the intention of ever outbounding them. I don't. I buy names that I feel like when I pick up a name, I do the research before I even buy the name. I'm like, okay, who's going to buy this name from me?
Yeah. Start with the end
Sometimes,
in mind.
yeah, so exactly. Sometimes the prospect could be a single prospect, and most times it's multiple prospects. Sometimes it's hundreds of prospects. Like I own a name, the creator economy, right? I feel like that has
Right.
multiple prospects. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, I can also turn that into a newsletter, conference, a blog. So, it has multiple use cases as well. So that's usually what I try to put into the selection. Like what are the odds of this name selling? And some names, they just sound cool, right? They might be short. or they're just like, they just sound like, what we call a brandable. They don't have a meaning, but they're short and memorable. That, so there are different factors for different names. But I'll just suggest this: don't rely on only hand registrations. You know what I mean? Because those have a very low odd of finding a buyer. It's a skill. Now you're probably better at it than most people I've seen, because these are pretty decent names and you're only going to get better, right? It's more of a waiting game with hand registrations, right? So you're literally asking to hit a lottery ticket. You want to buy a name for $5 at Unstoppable Domain Wednesdays and list it for 10 grand. Oh, so what's the return on that investment? It's what, a 2000x, right? The odds are very slim that that's going to happen, but does it happen? Yes, it does. I've actually sold quite a few hand registrations myself, but I think that most of the sales that I've made are meaningful names where I identified who the potential end user would be and try to create a connection with that end user to increase the visibility. This week I sold a name, dccnewsletter.com. I literally subscribed to the people. The people I sold the name to is a company called direct-to-consumer.co. They have a newsletter called DTC Newsletter. So when I saw that name at the auction, I Googled it and they came up and I saw that I was like, they should own this name.
Yeah.
Even though it took me a year and some months to sell it, it wasn't as long as the odds of, I sold it for an 80x. I bought it for 30, sold it for 2,500, EX, 83x or whatever. And, I bought it in November 2023, but I don't think I would have sold that name if I didn't outbound it to that company.
Yeah.
They would
And
have never
they
known
were
that.
the ones who bought it eventually.
What's that?
They were the ones who bought it eventually.
Yeah, they ended up buying it. They were the ones that bought it. But the point I'm trying to make is it's one thing to identify a name and identify potential buyer of the name, but you increase the odds of a sale when you actually reach out to them and let them know, hey, I have this name. I think it's a perfect fit. They know that's a good name for them. What's separating that name from being in their hands is just a negotiation. So once we reach an agreeable price, they acquire the name. And there's so many potential opportunities like that where there are names that company would want. I have a name, it's easternchristian.com. There's an Eastern Christian school. They look at that name all the time. I mean, that name gets so much traffic. And eventually they're probably going to be the ones to buy the name. But so I buy names that I feel like there are end users out there. Now, there are names that you buy, you speculate that this is a trend or this is a thing that will happen in the future. To me, that's more of a waiting game. And so in domain investing, cash flow is really important. You want to be able to at least make enough to pay for your renewals next year. Because these names you're showing me might take a year, 5 years, 10 years to sell. They might never sell. We don't know. Right?
Yeah.
But you need to sell enough of them to cover your renewal. So you have to have certain names that you can sell within the next year so that you can be profitable.
And that's a good, one frame I'm trying to use to think about domaining is like shotgun strategy or sniper strategy. Like,
I think you got to do.
Yeah, here I've definitely gone, shotgun, right? So I have operator, I have auto, and I've just riffed on it. And, some of they're kind of marginal. They don't sound great, but it's got some keywords that I think could be valuable.
Can I give you some advice? Please don't fall in love with any of your names.
But yeah.
That's another common mistake domainers make. Because, when we select names, our ego is involved.
Yeah.
You get my point?
Bro, you're reminding me of out.
Yeah, it's easy to fall in love with your names and you start justifying it. And, you're looking for validation. And it's a very, very important lesson that I had to learn the hard way.
This is the tweet I'm going to send out on this exact topic. When it's renewal time, you got to take one of your old hand regs out back and put them down.
Yeah, you got to take them in the back and shoot them in the head.
I've actually never done it. I've let domain names expire and then I've seen them get picked up and now they're listed for like several $1,000s when I had a project with some SEO value attached to it. So I've been a victim of that, but I actually haven't had to let these guys go. That's part of you paying your tuition, you know, it's going to happen eventually.
Actually, I'm excited to let them go now. And that took years to get to that mindset because the way I look at it is you either have assets or liabilities in your portfolio. So the quicker I'm able to identify what I consider a liability, the more assets I own, right? And the more gunpowder I have, because think about it, right? Instead of renewing a name for $11 on GoDaddy, I can now take $11, go to Unstoppable Domains and buy 2 new names.
Mm.
So you're getting rid of dead weight to replace it with better names, right? Or I can go to the auction and pick up an expired domain name. You know, you just want to basically, it's not a quantity thing, it's more of a quality thing. And everyone's their own portfolio manager, and you owe it to yourselves to have the best assets in your portfolio based off your resources. You know, there are people that have only 2 names and, you know, their portfolio is worth more than my 3,000 names. Rightfully so, because they picked the right names. You know, they've had them for the right amount of time. So
Yeah.
not falling in love with your names is something that you want to adopt. That's a mindset you want to adopt early.
Yeah. Some of the best advice I've heard is, and this is, you know, more for crypto, or it came from crypto at least, but it applies everywhere, is like, you have to realize it is so much easier to buy the dream than to sell the reality.
Fact.
And like everyone can just have hopium and be high on that and say, oh, Hive Operator is going to be like the latest new trend. DeFi is going to be the new thing. You know, at some point, you
Is that how
soak
you
up
pronounce
a
it?
year later. What's that?
Is that how you pronounce it? DFAI? That's the first time
I
I've
have
ever
no
heard.
idea. I've never domainers use that term. I think it's probably not real.
It
It's
is
total
real.
punk.
It is real.
I don't know about that. It's too corny. It's too on the nose, you know? That's
Hey,
another
so
thing. It's
I
like,
bought DeFi got funds today for almost $30,000. So it's
yeah, I
definitely
mean,
down.
that's a great keyword. You can't beat with that. I mean, that's the other thing is like aesthetically, I have some aversion to these like strong keyword domains. Like it feels too on the like as a builder, I would not be caught dead with like I mean, some of these I would be fine with, but like I'm more inclined to buy like swarmoperators.com and like swarm, you know, if like it has this aesthetic like vibe to it versus like something that's really on the nose like autooutbound.com, you know?
Yeah, but you need to understand. I mean, you need to understand people buy names for different reasons. Sometimes the purpose is not to make it your brand. The purpose might be for customer acquisition, for visibility, for defense reasons. You know, they're names that will never be a brand name, but owning that domain because of the search volume is an advantage to you, right? So people buy things for names for different reasons, you know, especially in certain niches, like in the legal field. That's a thing, you know. They'll buy names and it'll get forwarded to a website because
Yeah.
people search those names and they're trying to reverse engineer the SEO so that they get that lead, right? And when you think about the cost of, you know, paid ads in that niche, they're trying to minimize those expenses because it's very expensive. Say, for example, an injury attorney to get leads, like it's a very competitive keyword. So owning certain domain names and building content on them and, you know, having quality backlinks and those, all these things come into play when people are considering buying a domain name. It's not always the name of the business. You know what I mean? And sometimes those keywords are too generic. And sometimes there's a disconnect between what the domainer thinks they're worth and what the value is. A good example, the word dentist.com, that's a domain name I don't think it's ever been built out. And my suspicion is the reason it's never been built out is someone probably thinks it's worth way more than any dentist is willing to pay for it. The only person who's going to want to use dentist.com is maybe like a directory, right? Or some sort of trade association or whatever, right? And they've probably established themselves with other domain names, right? So, but there's no single dentist out there that wants to be known as dentist.com, not at the price point that I suspect that name is being sold for. Would they love to be dentist.com? Of course, but they can get away with other options and do just fine.
Yeah, it's definitely out of their price range. But like a
Yeah, it's generic for
dental
what they.
insurer or yeah, just some referral site for dentistry.
Right. So the purpose won't be for one dentist office or a group of dentists to use that name. It would be more like, I can see a dentist trade association using that. Maybe some sort of like, I don't know, marketplace for dentists. But a single dentist in New York somewhere isn't going with dentist.com unless they happen to have owned that name early in the day, back in the day, and they never let go of it. The value of that name depends on the end user. And if that end user is not educated on why that name will be an edge for them, they're going to look at other alternatives.
Yeah. So what do you think like the right mix for a new investor is between like hand regs and auctions and expired domains, and like map that strategy onto like, who is this guy? Like, do they have an edge in like being on the cutting edge of tech and like knowing some keywords? Are they just a hustler? Are they an SEO person? Like, match their
Well,
skill set with like the strategy that they should be implementing early on.
honestly, I think before people buy names, they should get an education on the fundamentals, right? How to list names on marketplaces, how to price them, things like that are way more important than buying names to me. Like, it's almost like you don't want to go on a road journey without a map. And you have to carve out a strategy based off your resources. If you're coming in the business with $1,000, you have a different reality than someone, say, coming in with one Bitcoin that they want to diversify into domain names, right? You have to be aware of the trends. Like right now, .ai is very hot, but it doesn't mean every .ai name is going to sell, right? Or it doesn't mean that that's the best option for you. You can buy a .xyz for $1, or you could buy .ai for about $180 for hand registration, right? So opportunity cost is something you got to put in perspective. But I would be more diligent in what names I commit to, because every domain name is a subscription. You get me? Because you're paying a renewal for it. So just be very mindful of what you subscribe to, what you're adding your portfolio. Try your best to add as many assets as possible, and don't fall in love with the liabilities. Just be willing to learn. Join as many educational platforms as possible. I like what we're talking about here. There's so many resources for people to learn how to do domaining the right way, and understand that it's one of those things where you hopefully get better with time. I think I'm a better domainer than I was when I first started, and I think I'll be a better domain in a year or two from now. And that's the whole idea, is to keep growing at it.
Yeah. Sound advice. So GoDID Go has a question here. So during outbounding, what details like cost per click or search volume do you provide to the potential buyer, and what tools do you use to get that data?
It's all case by case. In some situations, the potential buyer doesn't give a shit about the data, because that's not why they're buying the name. And in some cases they do, or it could be a deal breaker. I'll give an example. I like to use examples. I throw the name, it was player, I can't remember, it comes to me. It was play, shit. Anyways, it was a name that was a slogan for the company, and that's why they bought the name, right? I sold another name. It was playsf.com. And when I saw the name, I Googled it, and I saw that there was a company called Play Studios that uses Play.studios. And I said to them, I said, what? I was like, when you go on when you put PlaySF in your browser, the first thing you see is Play.studios. And their tagline is Play SF, right? It's a studio in San Francisco. So I figured this is the right prospect for this name. I bought that name for $40. And I immediately started reaching out to them, and me and the guy went back and forth. And he bought
What
the
was
name.
your initial message to him?
It was, listen, are you interested in playsf.com? And I knew that he would be interested
So no
because
stats, no nothing, just
no, there was no need for any stats. There was no
yeah,
need for any
because
stats. At the
it's
time, I
personal.
think, yeah, it was just simply, I mean, I did at that time, I was of the impression that, oh, the stats would be important. And I think I actually went down that route. But I learned quickly the reason he bought the name was because that's his company tagline. And now that name redirects to their website. If you put in playsf.com, it goes to play.studio. And sometimes you have to remind people that buying a new name doesn't mean anything is changing. They can use it as a redirect to their current website. Sometimes people want that data. I think that was a big part of why I sold customer support AI.com. I was able to show the data, the cost per click, the monthly search volume. And, there are many tools you can use. People will tell you SEMrush, Ahrefs, but as a domainer, you don't want to go that route because those are very expensive search tools. I use keysearch.co because it's affordable. And, I'm not an affiliate or anything. I just found it to be something that is adequate for my domaining business. So keysearch.co, it's less than $20 a month. And I'm able to put in keywords and it gives me the monthly search volume and the cost per click.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. It looks nice. Yeah. So yeah, I remember talking to you about this. My impulse,
Let's go back to the main screen. You want to stop sharing your screen so we can
so
get
I remember talking to you about this, but we were reaching out to someone about a domain, and my impulse as like uh sort of on the spectrum, like engineer analytical mind, I'm just like, blast this guy with all the stats you can, pin him down, make his eyes explode at and mouth water at all the potential sales and traffic that he could be getting, and just like overload him in the first email and just keep it short and sweet and just boom boom boom, get out of there. And then you were like, no dude, don't do that, don't, like, vibes, people buy on vibes, sales about like vibes, and the soft
You didn't
sell.
even know he wants a domain.
Yeah, exactly. He don't even know what a domain is, dude. So like, what are you trying to do? Like throwing a SEMrush link at him? It's like, no, that's not how this works. And
Right.
and I've since retracted, and you thought more about just like, how do you make yourself just sound as natural and inoffensive as possible, and say like, hey, there's this thing, it looks like a good fit, hit me up, and then just leave it at that. Can you talk about your experience with like aggressive versus softer sales pitches and what the results have been?
Yeah, so I'm currently doing a 30-day outbounding challenge where I'm trying to sell at least $1,000 in sales every day. Am I going to achieve 1,000 in sales every day? Very unlikely, but I think I'll end up with at least 30,000 in sales in the next 30 days. So it's either one or the other, right? And in doing
How's it going
that,
so far?
it's been going very good. I'm actually supposed to start on March 1st, but I'm warming up now, right? So
Yeah.
I think I've already had 2 sales but these are names that I've been working on for a while,
We
right?
need we need March Madness for domainers. We need
Okay, let's make it March Madness
we
then,
need a we
right?
need a public we need public like trade history for
Doing
domain.
leaderboards and stuff like
You
that,
can
right?
bet on the domainers and who ends up with the better P&L at the end of the month.
Interested.
Okay, yeah, let's do
Some
it.
people would cheat though. But anyways,
It's
hey, go
true.
pick up the
It's
domain
true.
for me.
We need
So for me, I feel like when it goes back to the fundamentals of human psychology, right? If I'm trying to connect with you and add value, I have to have manners, right? And I have to have good communication skills, and I have to uh, persuasive but not aggressive, right? And I have to maybe, like you said, have data to back up my assertions or whatever, right? So it's just a combination of reading the room. Sometimes you're talking to someone and they're not in a decision making capacity, and sometimes you're talking to someone and they're just not they're not seeing eye to eye with you on a price, right? And, there's so many factors. Your job is to read the room and make the best decision. I sold the name megalasers.com for 8,888. And I wanted way more for that name. I just thought that it was such a cool name. mega lasers are used at all these concerts, like the lighting and all that good stuff. And when the guy told me the most I'll pay you is 8,888 and I'll pay you right now, I had seconds to make a decision if I wanted to wait potentially another 10 years to find a buyer or make the money right there and then. So I decided to do it. And with outbounding, you also have to do a little bit of education, right? There's a name that I tried outbounding, which is the exact match name of a business. It's massology.com. And she's convinced that getmassology.com is the best name for her. She's like, I already have all my SEO on this. I'm not going to pay what you're asking. The most I'll pay is $50. And I was like, it cost me way more than $50, first of all. And someone else could start a brand called Massology that has nothing to do with your massage business, and they'll drown your visibility, right? I wasn't able to convince her. But the point is, I enjoyed the back and forth. I learned a lot about how she perceived that name, and I learned how to have rebuttals for those type of objections in the future, right? Some outbounding efforts take years. You have to follow up because the domain is not always a priority for them, right? Some outbounding gets stuck on the price points where sometimes you have to make the concession and say, you know what, fuck it, man, let's just do it, right? And some of them, there's no connection. You can't force a fit. They don't want the name. You think they need the name and don't want to get emotional about it. It's just not for them.
Do you use any like pressure tactics, like saying, "Oh, I'm talking to someone else," or this lead time offer?
I've learned that when people want a name, they'll make it happen. You know what I mean? And now we have LCO and all kind of ways to make it easier for people to make an acquisition. I've just learned that, and I've also learned that outbounding isn't necessarily for making sales. It's for increasing the odds of making a sale. So sometimes when you outbound today, sells a couple of months later, right? They take a note of it, and now it's on their radar. So you've done your job by outbounding it, but they're just not ready to buy that name at that moment. You know what I mean? So, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, it's a slow burn. The education process takes a little while. And we see this just in like tracking our affiliate performance or like the UTM links that we're doing with our partners. Like people usually don't like click on an ad and then buy a domain right then and there. Like really you just want to get awareness, and then, you'll see that pay dividends down the line. But so other outbounding basics. What about, let's see, I think you've mentioned that LinkedIn has better response rates than email, right? Like,
I don't know. I don't think I said that. I don't remember saying that.
I feel like
I
I've
think
heard that
LinkedIn
from
is just
someone.
it's another resource.
Yeah.
I haven't had too much luck. Well, first of all, that's an area of improvement for me. I used to be way more active on LinkedIn, and during the pandemic, I abandoned it. There's only so much time. Everyone has a preferred social media platform, and mine just happens to be X. I use less of Instagram and LinkedIn these days. I'm more on X. The goal is to have an omnipresence, especially as a brand, but as individuals, it's very challenging. So we tend to prefer one to the other. And my preference is X, right? I have more traction, more, I just enjoy X a lot more.
Yeah.
So I do outbounding on
I feel
X.
like I'm in a bubble though. Just from our Unstoppables marketing efforts,
Well,
I feel like I've flooded the zone on Twitter reasonably well in the past.
as a brand, you have to have an omnipresence.
Yeah. And now I'm looking at LinkedIn, I'm looking at
Yeah, absolutely.
pros, and
Because you're not representing Brady, you're representing Unstoppable Domain. So you have to be everywhere all the time. That's basic.
yeah. I just worry like domainers get into this trap of like replying all their domains for sale on below other domainers' tweets. It's like, dude, you're selling
Yeah,
to the
that's how you get
other
blocked.
sellers. That's
Yeah.
not your market at all. What are you doing?
So that's such a bad habit because one, no one likes when you do that,
Yeah.
right? It comes off as thirsty and desperate.
Mm-hmm.
It's impolite. It's just
It's
bad,
just
bad
bad.
business, right? And you're spamming people. People don't like it. If you notice, the best domainers don't do it. Uh, if the person gives you permission, if they say, "Hey, list your best names to sell," if it's one of those type of threads or tweets, go ahead and do it. But when people mention names they have for sale and you're mentioning competitive names, it's just not good business.
Yeah.
I censor either mute you, and even when people that do it habitually, I block them. I think that there's a there's a possibility of selling names on Twitter for sure. I've sold names. People have told me I bought this name because you tweeted about it, but I think that the odds are slim, right? I think you're better off having your own customized marketplace. Like I have domainsplug.com where people can see my domains, like a bunch of my domains. That's a better practice, or a link to your unstoppable domain profile or GoDaddy profile or whatever.
Yeah.
But as far as like LinkedIn, I think LinkedIn is one of those places where, as a domainer, at some point you have to have a strategy, because that's where a lot of business, decision makers are. So it's one of those things that I want to improve on this year. Because when you do a lot of research, you realize that the prospects are on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
That's one area of weakness for me personally that I need to improve on.
What about, so LTO, you mentioned LTO and throwing that towards prospective buyers. Like, at what point do you mention LTO? How do you try to size the down payment versus the term to hit that sweet spot between, like it's rate on the term and actually opening the door for a low barrier to entry? Like, how do you present it? And then how do you, tune the LTO to the right?
So I mean, the LTO could be from an LTOs increase the odds of making even inbound sales, right? Because, when people see a name, and, that's how we all buy large purchase items. We make payments, right? So when people realize they have that option, it increases the odds of them making that acquisition, right? But when you're doing outbounding and you're telling someone, okay, yeah, this name is $20,000, but you can buy for as low as this amount per month, then you're also increasing the odds of a deal being reached. That's how I present LTOs. LTOs are a really, 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 really important innovation in the space, because it wasn't always there. And I'm seeing a lot more conversions with domainers that leverage LTO. The other day, Michael sold lawyers. I think it was lawyernearme.com for $100,000 with a 60-month LTO. Michael Durash. People share DMs with me, $20,000 sales for 12 months. And, you're basically moving the needle forward. You're making sales, and that's all that matters. Do people prefer to get 100 grand or 20,000 in lump? Of course, yes. But if that's what it takes for you to make a sale, then just get that money in drips.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you know how he picked up lawyersnearme.com? Was that an expired?
I believe it's a hand registration from 1996.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
No, or maybe 2005, excuse me. I don't know.
Yeah.
He
Don't
had
get
it
your
for a
hopes
long
up,
time.
chat. Sorry.
Yeah, he had it for a long time.
That era has passed. Yeah. I mean, I remember seeing Darpon shares, a founder of Adam.com, shares these awesome figures and data out of their marketplace, which is really fascinating. I think he showed that having an LTO increases sales through rate by something like 20%.
I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah, it's very considerable. And of course, some of those people flake at some, double digit rate, but that's still money in your pocket. And, domainers probably don't care if they flake at the end of the day.
On the
They're
domain.
breaking even, they're renting a domain, and they're also, getting to keep it at the end of the day. So it's not the worst thing in the world to get a couple rent checks coming in. Let's see. I'm trying to find, the exact tweet. I can't find it though. But yeah, anyway. So here's Dinero asks, what's your minimum price for LTO?
Right, so I try to sell names, most of my names above 4,888 on LTO. So if it's less than 5 grand, it's usually buy it now.
Yeah.
If it's above 5 grand, I'm open to an LTO.
Yeah. I also think I saw data, I think this was also from Darpan, where he said under 20 grand, like you want a bin, and that like trying to negotiate prices and with request prices above that number is just not even worth it. So you just want a bin price under 20 grand, which was surprising. I guess it just like opens the door. It gives something concrete for the buyer to think about and like actually run through their mind versus just a big what if with a request price number.
you're setting the right expectations. You don't get that $500 offer for a name that you won 20 grand.
Yeah. Well, Ish, this was a great inaugural session. I appreciate you coming on and teaching me, roasting my portfolio. Although I think you could have
You're
gone,
doing fine.
honest. So there's some shitty names in there, but this was
Oh,
fun,
I
man.
have way more shitty names than you. I'll tell you that right now.
I bet you do. Better upside and better downside than me, I'm sure. Hey,
But
yeah, man, this was great. For everyone listening, thanks for tuning in. We'll probably chop this up and make some clips that we can share. We're trying to make the TikTok investors of domaining, so we can give you little bite-sized nuggets that you can take with you and learn. And you can follow me on my domaining journey as well. That's a fun little aspect here, is that you get to see in real time me learning the tricks of the trade. Otherwise, we've got some 8 hours left on .com Friday at Unstoppable. So come by, register up to .coms for $5 each every Friday, as well as $1 XYZ Wednesdays. So get it while the getting's good. And Ish, until next time, thanks, buddy.
see you later, man.
Bye, y'all.